Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, in a new edition of the Energy Summit organized by Energynomics in a special situation. We are in the middle of the pandemic, which makes us organize this online meeting with the pluses and minuses. There are some advantages of this format, and I will speak about it later. In the first part of the day, as you've seen in the agenda, we have a few first-hand speakers who will open the day, and we will also start in a short time the first panel dedicated to the energy transition. So we are prepared. You can see us on the LinkedIn, on the YouTube, on my connector in 2 transmission versions. Now, these are the technical elements, and now I will give the floor to say a few words from the organizers to Varinia Radu, who is a general manager and founder of Energynomics, to tell us a few words in the opening of this session of this Energy Strategy Summit. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gabriel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in the online edition of this year of the Energy Strategy Summit 2020. It is a difficult but a very important year because we hope that soon all the essential elements will enable the launching of a new investment cycle in the energy industry, from local and European policies and investment strategies of the private and financial sector. We have the strategic plan announced in the national plan for and the legislative provisions that will harmonize the provisions in Romania with the common market, the liberalization of gas and electricity, bilateral energy contracts, clean energies, contracts for different support schemes, and restructuring plans. On the EU level, we discuss the investments, the projects for the relaunching of the economies after the pandemics, although the just transition doesn't include nuclear power or natural gas. Romania still has a card to play in its role for the energy transition. The large companies have plans for the next year from the point of view of investments in new technologies, and the distribution and transport companies have clarified the investments for the next years. These come hand in hand with those of the producers, and they ensure the adequacy. The criteria for sustainable financing based on the decarbonization and environment protection targets influence the strategies of the funds and the investors and so on. So the dialogue of Energynomics will summarize the most important topics of the moment and details of concrete investments. We are honored that you are here, and I'm sure you will have an interesting day. Thank you very much, Varinia. I will give the floor to the representative of the Ministry of Exterior, Mr. Badescu, responsible with energy issues from the Romanian diplomacy. We are honored to have him here for a message which should open the important topics to be approached. We are in a period where the European policies are very influential as regards the market behavior of the companies in Romania and the energy movements. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Cristian Badescu. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I have technical suggestion to speak, not to speak very quickly in order for the interpreters to be able to interpret. Thank you for the invitation. It is an honor for being here again, and I'm encouraging this discussion format, which is becomes more prestigious and traditional, if I may. The Energy Summit has its role in dialogue between the authorities and the companies and the society and the players in the society interested in the energy issues, and is a sign of normality for the state and the society that we want to build. We see each other again after less than a year, when we continued to have a dynamic context as regards the energy industry. My intention today is to divide my intervention into three parts: general remarks, then a short presentation regarding what the European dynamic means, and finally a set of remarks regarding the capacity of Romania to play a more important role in the region. I will start with the general remarks. Like in the last year's discussion, we are within political engagement for combating the climate change with an inevitable impact on the energy industry, and these topics are put together also in the organization format of the governments. Also in our case, the dialogue between the Ministry of Economy and the government is normal, and this will happen. It's important that at the international level, this regarding the Paris Agreement on climate change can be achieved only through a joint effort of the countries. The EU is a model, and if it will show that this can bring results on the economic and social level, also other international players will follow. We shouldn't wait for these results from the political at a political level. At the same time, the reaching of zero emissions for 2050 in the EU can be achieved only through a combined set of measures in the field of energy efficiency and the production of renewables and the new technologies that can enable us, at least in a transition period, to continue to use fossil fuels. I should make a short remark regarding a political discussion which will start this autumn regarding the target of the EU for reducing the emissions for 2030 as an intermediate step for the 0% for 2050. In this context, Romania will also have to continue to be committed in this intense effort which takes place at the EU level, and the energy industry has an essential role in finding the relevant solutions to attain the political targets. Well, talking about the context, this is a constant thing that remained from the last year and will still influence the environment. The second constant element will be the long-term increase of the need of energy together with digitalization processes and automation processes and implementation of AI. And in this context, the economic transition of the EU and implicitly Romania must include also the increase of the production capacity, which will mean, in fact, the increase of the energy security. There are several elements in the context that are new elements. On one hand, the spectacular variations and the conjunctural variations of the prices of the fossil fuel, and on the other hand, the pandemic that imposed reorientation of the priorities, and at a certain stage it seemed to question the commitments of the EU regarding the energy and the climate changes. Fortunately, the relaunching plan of the EU was quick, and I'd like to appreciate the capacity of the EU institutions to formulate support and commitments quickly for the companies, and it was a context that enabled it enabled the achieving of important steps for the consolidation of the joint European endeavor on several levels. These were a few remarks regarding the context. Now, talking, because I started to speak about the EU, regarding the evolution at this level, I should start from a comparison. I would like to give you two examples regarding the way Romania has positioned itself in relationship to Brussels recently. On one hand, Romania was together with a large number of member states who requested that this European relaunch should be focused on the implementation of the Green Deal. At the same time, Romania, together with a relatively large group of member states, have submitted a joint position to request the continuation of the support that the gas sector should benefit, at least in a transitional period. And Romania was one of the member states who sent a message regarding the need of supporting the production of natural gas. Because if we talk about the energy security on long term of the EU, the two elements that we need are clear and undertaken: the diversification of the supply and the putting to use of the local resources. These two examples show us the nuances which are specific to Romania regarding the European commitments. Romania sent two important messages. On one hand, it sends the message regarding the importance of continuing following the target of energy diversification. And here I believe we have to see that the area of Dobroja, coming back to Romania, and the area of the Black Sea have a potential of energy production, which is quite important. There is the component of nuclear energy. The development of the Chernavoda project is still strategic in the national strategy and the integrated plan. And from the political point of view, the activity is quite intense for redefining the project. And this together with the strategic speakers. Talking about the Black Sea, we talk about an offshore, and it's important that the discussions continue for adopting a competitive and transparent legal framework. But I'd like to say that the Black Sea means for Romania, from the energy point of view and the offshore potential for wind energy, the Commission. So this is important for me. The EU the Black Sea should be also found in the policy of the EU regarding the offshore energy. This is the first message. The second message is related to the fact that it is essential for this energy transition, and this climate commitment should not have strong negative effects regarding the economy and the social plan. I should give you two examples here as opportunities. The Modernization Fund, which has been mentioned before and which becomes active at the beginning of next year, and which for Romania represents an opportunity to perform this transition without the negative effects, like I said. And secondly, the fund for just transition, which is defined for supporting. The first one supports the industry, and the second, the regions affected by this energy transition. And for Romania, the thermal plants are important, and around these regions we will define the plans for supporting these regions, or these local authorities, the citizens of the area and the industries. There will be the idea is to develop different industries and rebalance the economic activity of the region. This third message sent by Romania is to the need of putting to use the new technologies. We need the new technologies. They are key for attaining the objectives of energy reduction and energy transition. And from this point of view, on a national level, stronger partnership between the authorities and the companies regarding the development of research and innovation is fundamental in order for Romania to be more active on the European level in the alliances that will be created for developing new technologies. And the most recent one is related to hydrogen, which seems to be one of the key energies for the future, and the commitment of Romania in this format of research becomes essential. And now another message which Romania would like to convey is the fact that although it's under stress, under pressure, Romania remains with the national competency, the energy mix. I mentioned the nuclear energy and the efforts we make for maintaining the natural gas together with the new technologies in the energy mix, and a message for maintaining the technological neutrality. And from the point of view of financing, things have changed. The European Investment Bank has redirected the target towards less polluting energies and technologies. Talking about technological novelty, we should speak about the concept of technological sovereignty, of sovereignty of the EU, and this is how the EU is thinking about new technologies. Now, looking at the watch, I will start my third part of the intervention regarding the capacity of Romania to become a more important player at a regional level, a region which is characterized by fragility and a higher risk of disturbances as regards to the energy supply. But we see two trends lately: the increase of the interconnection degree, which makes the market more fluid, and real multiplication now in the perspective of the diversification through the supply from various sources, and I'm talking about the fact that in December, Tanaco brought gas from Azerbaijan to Turkey, and the other pipeline that started to work in January.
This is why it's worth mentioning an international dimension of this, because we need a nuanced approach able to integrate the fossil fuel energetics and the new geopolitics of the renewable fuels, renewables energies, and the capacity of the new technologies to have an impact on the previous capacity. And beyond the capacity of cooperating with the strategic partners, all this needs to lead to our goal, that is to secure energetic security. When I'm talking about an international dimension of the national security, I'm talking about Romania's activity in the regional area, and this is a very promising initiative, the 3 Cs initiative, and the investment fund of the 3 Cs, which enables multiple financing opportunities to support all the projects that the Romanian companies are running. Last but not least, a few words about the importance of the concrete infrastructure projects in this Romanian strategy. And I'm here about ROA, which is expected to be completed this year. And the Iași-Ungheni gas pipe, powered by Transgaz. This is expected to be implemented and operated this year. So we've got concrete elements. We are determined enough, and we are expecting for a very visible outcome and high quality outcomes under this target of strengthening the Romania's role at the regional level. And as a final message to encourage this type of dialogue and manifestation of our openness, the openness of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is to ensure a permanent dialogue with the companies about our regional development strategies. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bădescu, for this message for the opening of the 2020 Energy Summit. The major topics have been reached so far, starting from the intervention of the regulators' intervention, and we already received some questions from our attendees on My Connector platform. And I now invite Mr. Zoltan Noghibege to tell us, to answer one of these questions, which goes like that. At the 6th edition of this event, we are still talking about strategy. When can we pass from strategy to facts about renewables, and when will we be settling the regulation issues of the companies and of the markets? So, Mr. Zoltan Bege, you've got the floor now. I apologize for intervening during your message while asking this question, because I know you were to talk about this topic. So, Mr. Noghibege, you've got the floor. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this invitation. I'm honored to be addressing you, the Energynomics audience, and the energy experts in Romania and abroad. Romania, as any other member state of the European Union, has got in line with the climate and the clean energy targets, and is about to tackle the investments for this new period, which are necessary to reach the targets set for 2030 in terms of renewable energies and of energetic efficiency. After a worldwide economy shock we are currently undergoing and we are currently witnessing with these pandemics, the relaunching plan for infrastructure in general and for the energy infrastructure in particular is very much depending on the way we initiate the strategy to reduce the greenhouse emissions, and during the following next years our action will be vital to increase Romania's chances to be in line with the EU targets in terms of clean climate set for 2050. Congratulations on the titles you chose for this summit and for the topics you are about to tackling. This summit had to be very carefully planned. So we are about to establish a strategy. We are talking about a strategy for energetic transition, about a strategy for technology, and strategy for cooperation. I'm not going to get into details because I'm sure that each and every panel will include very interesting discussions, and I don't want to draw any premature conclusions. But I cannot help noticing how much you worked to prepare the decarbonation process through the energetic transition. We need to use the financing available as much as possible, as Mr. Bădescu said earlier. The Just Transition Fund and the relaunch transition and whatever will be used after the pandemics. As was noticed in a message of the European Commissioner for Energy. The state aid mechanisms have been promised during the new regulations, that is the difference agreements, which hopefully will be taken into account by the Ministry of Economy and Energy, not only for nuclear energy, but for other energies as well. And it will be important in terms of specific energies. And if we are about to talk about direct financing sources, the European Commission is very much interested in keeping financing the renewable energy projects and energetic efficiency projects. It goes without saying that investing into production capacity, we've got obstacles such as funding, which is invoked by investors. There are so many funding mechanisms that from the point of view of those interested in investing into this field, their issue is limited to some technical details, according to which they will pick the most appropriate funding method. And yet there are other issues arising which are rather related to the activity of ANRE, the National Authority for Energy Regulations in Romania. I'm talking about the energy to the power network, the rebalancing costs, about renewables, and about securing funding through contracting. And from this standpoint, any potential investor is rather looking for clear legislation, for harmonizing the Romanian legislation with the European one, on drafting the secondary legislation. This is why it's so much important to have a unitary covering of that in line with the EU regulations to encourage the PPPs and the bilateral agreements which are so necessary to reach our goals. In terms of getting the national energy system flexible, we managed to take some steps in terms of the rebalancing market, because the National Authority for Energy Regulations approved some strategies for 2021. We've got a single price on the market. We've got a 15-point system. This is a certain step taken towards harmonizing the European regulation market to the EU one. And this is a positive sign. This is the purpose. And flexibilization is a requirement, a very important requirement to integrate new renewable capacities and in order to attract new investors. We are all aware that we've got a long way to go and there's still much to achieve. And one last idea about investments into renewables. The directive about the renewable resources to come into force on the 30th of June 2021, so in 1 year's time, this directive provides the checking of the EU member state progress in 2025, 2026, and 2027. So within 2 years, we've got 2 years' time, we've got a first analysis, which is worrying because we all know how difficult and how complicated the bureaucratic process is to license and to put some power stations into operation. And this is only a reminder for ourselves, the stakeholders in this process, because we sometimes tend to forget some things, especially the negative ones. And if we talk about energetic transition, we need to talk about gas as well. Gas is very much important, and it will be important for the next 10 or 20 years for the EU and for Romania. This means important natural gas reserve and unused resources. We recently saw a report of the National Power Authority, which showed that the only segment where the power consumption rose worldwide was the power production. Unlike other industries or household consumption, this increased as so the Romanians' potential in terms of gas is so high that all such segments can be covered. We need to replace the coal stations. And the connection of less than 40% of the Romanian households to the gas networks show that this segment has a very high potential as well. The National Authority for Energy Regulations approved this strategy in May. Those are many opportunities for the local authorities. The primary legislations allow such stakeholders to invest into local gas networks and to attract investment. Investment with high potential in terms of local economic development. Unfortunately, the favorable evolution of the gas price this year was unexpected and unprecedented, and the industry cannot benefit of this circumstance enough, because we still need 5 or 6 years to get awake and to see what is happening around us. But this is a promising path of capitalizing our Romanian potential in terms of gas. And the first step is to unblock the gas exploitation from the Black Sea, which can radically change Romania's position in the area in terms of energy and economy. And as far as I know, the emergency ordinance was published last week, and I greet the Romanian government's decision to amend the law of energy and gas, and the obligation to transaction gas for the gas suppliers was eliminated from the law, which is welcome. It's more than welcome. And this is a commitment towards the Romanian decision makers. And the liberalization is something I need to talk about. We are very close to liberalizing the national energy market. There are 6 months so far until the liberalization of the household energy market. The prices for energy were prepared, and we are in our last in the last step of it. I'm persuaded that liberalizations will have beneficial effects on the households, although not starting from tomorrow. But we need to be patient, and we need to work on this market dominated by so many suppliers, and in the long run, and in the medium and long run, the consumers will be the ones to feel the benefits of liberalization. The side effect, which is also beneficial in my opinion, is the investors' confidence. Liberalization is a sign that the Romanian authorities are willing to support the market. And I can assure you that the interest of international investors in the Romanian market is important. And this is what the investors are looking for: opportunities for producing, supplying energy, for running their business in Romania. And in the end, I'm confident that the so much wanted investment can occur, and I'd be happy this summit to be an opportunity for you to persuade several authorities or companies to take steps to attract investments in the energy field. Thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you best of luck for the discussions. Thank you so much, Mr. Zoltán Nog, for your Nogbegi, for your intervention and for the message you conveyed for our attendees for the 6th online edition of the Energy Strategy Summit. We were able to understand the stakes in this field, and what are the perspectives for the regulation. We'll be completing this session with a recorded message of Mr. Ambassador Richard Morningstar, who has been the U.S. ambassador to the EU for a long period. A message broadcast before his live intervention he'll be having around 5 p.m. today. So let's hear from Mr. Richard Morningstar.
Greetings to all of my friends in Romania. I wish I could be there in person with you at your summit. I would like to thank Verenia and Gabriel for inviting me to participate, even if only on video. And I would also like to send greetings to Alex Serban, who is our representative in Bucharest. I'll start just by saying that I really believe that Romania has a critical role to play in transatlantic energy cooperation. Romania is at a strategic interconnection point, being on the Black Sea coast and being able to transit energy ultimately from the Mediterranean, from the Caspian, as well as LNG that could come into Romania through Greece and Bulgaria, and then on to the rest of Central and Eastern Europe. Romania has also played a pivotal role in moving the Three Seas initiative forward, hosting a Three Seas summit a couple of years ago, being an investor and one of the first two investors in the Three Seas Investment Fund, and really playing a very positive role with respect to that very important project. But I also should say that there are challenges that we have to address. The EU is shifting its emphasis away from gas infrastructure. Russia's Turk Stream pipeline could jeopardize competition in the region. There's still uncertainty over resource development in the Black Sea, and of course, uncertainty created by the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on future investment. But these issues can be mitigated in any number of ways. The Atlantic Council issued a report. These were recommendations to Brussels and to Washington as to how to move forward. I guess first and foremost, the thing that I would want to emphasize is that we need to work together to develop competitive and transparent energy markets. Gas is going to continue to be important for the foreseeable future to reduce overall emissions and further the conversion from gas to coal. And through regional cooperation, such as the Three Seas Initiative, infrastructure can be developed and can play its necessary role in the region. It's also important that we develop alternative resources from the Black Sea, from the Eastern Mediterranean, from the Caspian, as well as LNG, which can come to Romania, as I mentioned before, through Greece and Bulgaria. We also have to work to make sure that the third energy package, the EU's third energy package, is effectively implemented, and that Turk Stream follows the rules, and that Gazprom follows the rules, if in fact Turk Stream is going to move forward. Finally, with respect to these issues that I've just been talking about, it's important that there be a joint financing strategy, and I'm happy to say that the United States now has $1 billion which it can invest in Central and Eastern Europe. And that $1 billion can be leveraged further through such things as project finance guarantees and the like. So there's a real opportunity that the United States can put its money where its mouth is and participate in some of these very important projects. Romania is to be commended in various ways. The fact that interconnections have been developed with Moldova is incredibly positive. Moldova has been entirely dependent on Russian gas, and now it won't be. It's also important, with all the positives with respect to the Brua pipeline, that obstacles also be overcome, including with respect to the Romania-Hungarian interconnector. It's also important to resolve all issues with respect to Black Sea development, so that investors can be certain as to what their return is going to be. Another area which I think it's very important to cooperate on is the European Green Deal. Developing green technologies is essential to energy security, because new technologies will increase sources of energy as well as lessen dependence on a dominant supplier such as Russia. In meeting climate goals, we also need to ensure that there will be an affordable, reliable supply of energy. And one way to get there is for the US and the EU, under the auspices of the Green Deal, to work together to develop new technologies such as hydrogen, carbon capture, battery storage, new nuclear technologies, artificial intelligence, digitization, and more. And with the right policies and strong transatlantic cooperation, Romania stands to be a regional leader in energy reforms and will be a leader in increasing overall European energy security. And I wish you the best of luck with respect to the summit. And again, greeting to all my friends. And I hope that you and your family and friends stay healthy as we move forward in this difficult world that we're dealing with. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you, even if by video.
Important level. Mr. Pepignoloni, the representative of RVE, Mrs. Corina Popescu, CEO Electrica, Bogdan Banda, and we will wait for Mr. Petre Stroie from Metro Romania. Good morning. I'm glad that you are here. Can you hear me? Everything is fine. Good morning.
Yes.
It seems everything is fine. Now we will start by giving the floor to Mr. Carlo Pignoloni regarding the position of the association that brings together all the important wind energy producers or players. Please, good morning. You have the floor.
Thanks a lot. So, do you hear me? Okay, fine. Thanks a lot for the invitation. That is the first time for me as president of RWEA, so a very interesting occasion also to share with these very reputed people this very, very important matter. So before talking about Green Deal, I would like to be a little bit provocative in the sense that asking to myself and to you, is there an alternative to decarbonization? Because sometimes it's important to remind that everything is coming, realizing that we are living a very hard time, in which probably for the first time in the history, so we as human beings are interfering so much with the planet that even our life and the future of the planet is at risk. You know that in this moment in Russia, in the northern part of Russia, is roasting in one of the coldest places in the world. Now the people, instead of driving snowmobiles, are taking their baths in the river that usually are iced. But also because, we heard recently also the president, Iohannis, here in Romania, that were blaming the climate change as one of the main causes of the flooding that were hit the country. And this is clearly something that is recalling also from politicians, from a very important person for Romania, that is the president, this element. Then some of you might think, come on, Carlo, don't talk like a Greta Thunberg follower. We are managers, we are politicians, we have to look at our business. But, it's important to remind the sense of urgency, because the climate change is already here. Probably when there was the Kyoto time, probably we were in time. Now we already know that we are hurting the planet. We have to act urgently in order to try to limit the damage. That's the point. Not probably there is also the risk that at a certain moment in time we are not being on time to recover the situation. This is my point, from my point of view, very important in order to give also the perception of the whole humanity that is looking at us acting in this field. But also coming to practice things, to talking to policymakers. Germany, for instance, that is very reputed country in Europe, probably is the most important economy. They already acted in this sense. they're already giving up new coal. They are relying on a very important fleet of renewables and strongly investing also in further plans. Also looking other part of the carbonization. So the car makers, the famous German car maker already jumped into the electric vehicle and whatsoever. This is to say that basically here is the moment to act. There are also a couple of reasons. No, I heard from both from Mr. Badescu and also Mr. Nagy, very important elements that I strongly support to be focused. But why I'm saying I'm recalling the sense of urgency for two reasons. One, because it's the moment to act. The second is that the electricity field is intrinsically more complex than, for instance, the gas or the oil field. And, there is a lot of complexity also for the transition to green that is implying a lot of this complexity in terms of choices, in terms of investment, so it's taking time. And also the choices. Why? Because the trade-off among the several solutions are depending on the country, not on the economy, not simply, there is no scheme to be followed. That's why it's important to have all these stakeholders and policymakers working together in order to find out the best trade-off for the solutions. And gas for sure is important in the short, medium term. On the other hand, shouldn't be an apology in order to focus on gas, losing the final target, that is the decarbonization. We know perfectly how much is important to invest in gas, but also the lock-in that is implied for some investment, and because sooner or later we should give up also gas. This is more than clear if we want to decarbonize the whole world. Now, here in this moment in Romania, there are a lot of I would say opportunities, because this complexity in any case has been also understood at the EU level, and that's why there are a lot of funds available. Once again, it's important to have a clear strategy, otherwise it's difficult, because there is also competition at the EU level in order to get these funds. This year there'll be the year in which we are going to translate into the primary law, or probably at the beginning on the next one. Obviously, the political moment has to be taken into account, obviously, because there is election year, this one. So the 944 is very important, because it's a very comprehensive law that has to be issued here, and they will touch in several points of the energy sectors, including distribution, and that's why I'm referring to the complexity in comparison to other fields, because all the elements of the chain value in the electricity field is needed in order to be adapted and to make them suitable for this Green Deal. Obviously, we are seeing very positively the fact that the PPA has been already endorsed, let's say, here in the country, even though we know that there are some difficulties in the parliament course of the law, but it is crucial also, not only because it is in line with the expectation of the European Union, but it is really, as it's happening in other countries, once again, is happening. This is a very important leverage also to have another important player inside this field, that are the customers. The future of the world from in the energy sector, in the electricity sector, we'll see the customer as a protagonist of their choices, and also driving through these choices, starting probably with the main customer, the big customer, through the PPA. For instance, the transition to green now is something that is possible for most of the corporation, and they are pursuing. And then another important, but now coming to what we are doing, for instance, with their way, apart to congratulate for this and waiting for this PPA we implemented, we have also shown our sense of responsibility of this transition. For instance, I want to sign out that our initiatives for the Vala Giului area that is the miners area, in which they probably in the future they have to give up. Already the crisis is there. And our initiative is to try to find out a solution for an employment of these people in another field, possibly under the new Green Deal possibilities. And this is something that very concrete. It is out of the scope of obviously of our business, but is showing to also the policymaker how much is important for us not to leave behind anyone, because this is another important element. In order to go there, we have to act all together. Then there is the element, the last one that I want to touch, also because I don't want to waste the time on the other, is the word used by Mr. Najibege, that is flexibility. Flexibility is absolutely needed in the system, is part of the complexity that I was referring, is made of investment. For instance, the grid strengthening that is absolutely needed here in order to allow the further development. But also, sorry for interruption, but also because basically there are some other kind of investment, storage, for instance, that is important. What kind of storage? Even hydrogen, has been quoted by Mr. Badescu, is important, even though from economical standpoints it's more difficult to be achieved. But it's a chance that also at European level we want to scout, and it's important in comparison with other kind of storage, like the battery ones, that is probably more mature, but probably suitable for some kind of storage, not maybe a short-term storage rather than the long-term one. So all in all, there is a lot to do. My invitation is to convene very often and to have a clear agenda in order, and for sure we will be an important actor in this point, also to solicit the discussion and to propose some solution in order to achieve those targets from renewables. That's all on my side, and thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Mr. Pignoloni, for this initial intervention, where you mentioned the key points of RVA, the large wind energy producers. I will ask some questions from the part of the viewers later on. And now I'd like to give the floor to the representatives of two important energy companies. And I'm sure that in the two interventions of Mrs. Corina Popescu and Mr. Bogdan Badea, we'll find the answer to one question. Namely, in the last 20 years, the investments in the national system collapsed from 40% to 10 to 20% of the budgets of the companies. So what does the ministry and ANRE do? Because the plans have been already approved and announced. I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Corina Popescu, and congratulations for entering the electric energy production market. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations of the Energynomics team. We delight us with the way you organize the events, and like Carlo mentioned before, we need such debates this year. Why? Because we're talking about investments, and in order to perform such investments, we need a stability framework in the legislative and regulatory field. In general, the investments in the electric energy are not recovered in a short period of time, but in a longer period of time. So this is why at the level of the economic operators, when they make such decisions, they try to perform a medium and long-term forecast. Coming back to today's topic, which is quite exciting, I should say, in this debate, it's true that we are in a point of like a crossroads. We have to accept that the Green Deal is an opportunity, and then we can go on a certain road, or we can remain in what we're doing today, and we deny the fact that the future is green, and we can go on another path. I believe that Romania, with the specialists in the electrical energy field, are smart enough to find
The projects in the energy sector are so important to us. I attended a course organized by the School of Venice. They presented the way the electric industry in Europe evolved over time, and I was so happy to notice that Romania was a green spot on the map. Romania has been a green spot since 2005, 2007, when we started implemented the correct energy market. We Upcom had an important role. We don't have to minimize its role, although there are several operators in the gas market. But on the other hand, we need to think that competition needs to create liquidity, and liquidity needs to be for the best interest of promoting investments, production on the one hand, and transparency, allowing producers, which are the core of this universe, allowing the producers to make the fair choices when it comes to liberalization. To get back to this intersection, we are facing a challenge. To decide our path we are to follow as a country, we need to have some programmatic elements to choose our direction. And we are talking about the energetic strategy. This is a document which doesn't exist. I'd be so happy for it to exist. And it needs to show our strategic directions as a country, including projects, including the way Romania plans to go through this transition period until the green energy, if this is the path we are choosing as a country. And this is on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is the National Integrated Plan for Energy, which includes the targets for renewable energies and energetic efficiency. This plan practically shows what precise fields need investment for the following decade. The investments in Romania is not a long-term objective, but a short to medium-term target. Mr. Bădescu and Mr. Nogbeg said beautiful words about the opportunities joining the Green Deal package, either accessing EU funds or EU Transition Fund money, which help us go through this transition period very smoothly. It's very nice, but we also need to have the two other programmatic documents. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us as a starter country to get as many funds as possible from the European Union. To get back to investments. As far as the distribution is concerned, at the level of my company, Electrica, we are among the largest investors in the energy industry. We invested more than 2 billion lei lately to develop the distribution networks. This investment, of course, starts showing their effects. They show to what extent they are effective, and we are following other countries' example. We get more and more digitalized, smarter and smarter as a distribution operator, and the segment which lacks investments, and I here refer your question, is the production sector. It's obvious that the way this natural closing, this lending will be operated towards this closing of the coal production sector will help emerging the new Romanian energy. The question goes, how do we do this landing? Shall we land very smoothly from our plane, or shall we be landing by throwing ourselves from the plane? We need to have alternatives and have a smooth landing. Romania needs to create alternatives, as Carlo was saying earlier. There are people working in this industry who certainly don't want to leave Romania. They want to stay in Romania and work for Romania. How can we create alternatives? The power sector, the power industry can create opportunities such as investments in renewables, solar panels, and alternatives for manufacturing solar panels. We are talking about mobility, power charging stations, for instance. There are so many important things, and if you manage to define those projects in the overall picture, if we manage to persuade the European Commission that we've got a very clear path to follow, if we manage to implement those projects, then we'll be successful. The issues for Romania is not to define the strategy, but is to implement the strategy. We need to complete the projects. This is what we are lagging behind of, and I couldn't say why precisely. It's necessary for us to draw an accurate analysis on a more extended chain. We need to take into account the way licenses are being issued by the authorities. There are so many facts we need to check and get clear to get more effective. I won't say much about transition. Many talks are occurring at the EU level. There are several opportunities to do it, but what's for sure is that we need a flexible production of energy just to prove in terms of wind energy, the system has reached its maximum without counterbalancing the predictability of the wind energy production with another flexible source. So it will be difficult for us to manage and to lead the wind system, because unlike other member states, we are at the border of the EU. We've got two blocked borders, and we are not interconnected with the energetic systems in Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova. So at the present, we are a balance factor in EU in terms of energetic security and about the way those systems got developed in Europe. I'll stop now, and I'm waiting forward for your questions. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, Gabi. Thank you, Mrs. Popescu, for your intervention and for what you uttered. You raised the ball to the main company providing flexibility in terms of energy, and I now pass the floor to Mr. Bogdan Badea, the CEO of Hidroelectrica, the chairman of the head of directors of Hidroelectrica. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to attend another event organized by you. The topics are so important. We've been talking a lot about investments in Romania, but this year we are finding ourselves at a turning point when the state-owned companies reorganized their investment strategies. This is a time when, if the decision makers talk to the main stakeholders from the energy field, the energy industry, well in advance, this will allow us a smooth transition for Romania from fossil fuels, which are very polluting, towards different and green energy systems, how our goal goes in line with the European goal. From this perspective, all those talks define the wishes of our companies to get developed, and on the other hand, the legislative needs to regulate such investments. Because there's been a long period when we talked about investments, but according to a principle, words are beautiful, but they are not enough. We need facts. We need to transpose the legislation, and we need to have legislative facilities to be worded to make investments more easily. And this is the key for developing investments in the energetic system, and especially in terms of production. As Mrs. Popescu was saying, investments in energy is the most affected area when it comes to transition. And here we come at the end of the road for certain technologies, and we are at the starting point in terms of other technologies. As it always happens with new technologies emerging on the market, it's not cheap at the beginning. So new energies are expensive at the beginning, but in time we'll need some support schemes to support our country. What it happened in Romania with the renewable energy scheme was not a bad thing. I know many talks are going on, and there are many controversial ideas about too generous support for renewables. But what's for sure is that the renewable support scheme has been introduced, introduced more than 1,000 solar megawatts, and this didn't allow for profitability at the beginning. This was not an attraction for investors to come and invest into Romania. This is a sheer competition among ourselves, the energy stakeholders, but it's also a competition among states and among various regions in the world. And if you truly wish something, you need to provide better facilities as a country. So better legislative facilities, such as predictable legislation, which we unfortunately didn't quite have. We need to provide a flexible and effective licensing system so that investors may be attracted. And whenever they take a look at the map, investors might say, yes, let's go to Romania and invest there, because we'll recover our investment very quickly, and we'll reach our target more quickly than other investors. And another talk which prevented the initiatives is the price for energy. Prices for energy have always generated difficult measures, and let's say not a devastating effect, but a very dramatic effect on the energy market. Just remember the support scheme for renewables. Some said that was a very generous scheme, and a radical scheme occurred, which put investors into such a circumstance that they didn't recover some of their investments. This led to unpredictability in the energy market and an exaggerated lack of caution. Okay, some said we had a scheme today, and the following day the rhetoric has changed. Yes, that was quite a popular rhetoric, so that the energy prices were low. But if we look at the current prices, the low energy prices were indeed low compared to other types of energy from some perspectives. And now we had another event with by introducing the regulated markets to protect consumers. And from this standpoint, much of the money invested in this field, and Hidroelectrica has got the largest ratio of energy supplied at a regulated price. And the only solution there, and this is why I appreciated Mr. Nogbege's intervention earlier, the only solution for the Romanian energetic system is to have a free and as regulated as possible market. Then the stakeholders will do their job, and the beneficial effects will be seen very quickly. It's important for us to have policies in line with the European policies, and it's important for us to get in line with the EU systems and strategies. Our energetic strategies need to be in line with the environmental strategies, and that's why Hidroelectrica struggles with an incomprehensible bureaucratic system. We notice important flooding on the Jiului Valley these days. And the strategy there in the Jiului Valley are contested nowadays. The investment is criticized. Not only that such investment produce energy there in the Jiului Valley, but this also protects the various cities and the population there. And our goal is to keep invest in the Jiului Valley, because until we do something in a very short time, then everything will go very bad. The companies having interest there need to be active. To the extent to which we can invest in Romania, we need to have legislation in line with the regulations in this area. I'd stop here, and I'm waiting forward for your questions. Yes, some questions have already been asked, and let's have some of them. Except that Mr. Petre Stroia is not connected right now. I now invite Mrs. Corina Popescu to be in line with us, to be online, and to get ready for the question and answer session. She'll now have the floor to say a few words to us as an important supplier, but Mr. Stroie will bring important information to us as well. I now have a question for Mr. Bada and for Mrs. Popescu, a general, a broad scope question. This is the elephant in the living room. Everyone is curious about the perspectives of the transaction that Electrica, Hidroelectrica, and SAP are doing about the CEZ assets. It's a duty for me to ask, what can you tell us about this? This is a transaction in progress, and unfortunately we cannot give details to you right now. I assume Mrs. Popescu can have the same question. We are listed at the Bucharest Stock Exchange, and when we have concrete information, we'll convey it to the capital market. We'll talk to the capital players, and we'll be informing you. Yes, I'm sure you will. I'm waiting forward to see Hidroelectrica listed at the Bucharest Stock Exchange, because there are so many benefits, and we try to talk about it as frequently as possible. There's a question for Mr. Bada as well. It is asked from Mr. Wirt. Hydro has got 440,000 megawatts potential. When do the important investment start? This question is quite aggressive. I looked at the investment plan of Hidroelectrica. It included some important investment besides retechnologization. What can you tell us about this, Mr. Badea? Although the new investment strategy for capacities is in progress, we need to have licenses to get in line with the environmental requirements, and we are aware of the Romanian potential. We need to get in line with the Nature 2000 goals, and we need to get our environmental legislation in line with developing the hydro facilities. This is quite in the New Deal, the Green Deal spirit. And this is the most important challenge in terms of legislation that Romania faces. We analyzed whichever of the industries and areas are in line with this development in Romania. For instance, I'd very much like to see a water plant built on the Danube. We talked about the Turnu Măgurele-Nicopole station, yet we need to develop bridges on the Danube, and the investments didn't go properly.
And within a short term, we would like to start a detailed feasibility study for this project on the Danube, which I'd like to have, which will bring Romania a significant hydro energy level, because there are not many other places where we can arrange a hydropower station. And if the authorities will support us, this will be also a project for the transition to a cleaner energy in Romania. Thank you. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Pignoloni. I'd like to ask you, could you make an estimation on the capacity of new investments in the wind energy under optimum conditions, with clear support scheme with PPAs and the elements that we brought into discussion? Do you have in view, do you know which new capacities could Romania have in the wind sector in the next 5 to 7 years?
Thanks for the question. There is an indication coming from the national plan that is giving something around less than 3 gigawatts to be installed. Very frankly speaking, we are thinking that there is a lot of room for further capacity. First of all, because this kind of figure has been calculated based on a certain scenario of energy mix that we are going to have in 2030. From our standpoint, probably there is still a lot of coal in that vision in 2030. That might be much less, and ideally zero. Then there is the big bet on the third unit of Cernavoda, because obviously from the decarbonization standpoint, obviously nothing to say. Obviously, on the other hand, there is a big bet because, as you know, I was here at the end of the 2008, the first time, and so there was a debate over there, and still is there. So it's not it's a complex issue that not necessarily we are going to solve by that date. So there is I would say a lot of energy that is there that probably might be contended, let's say, by wind and renewables in general, I would say. But we know that for the time being, wind is more competitive than other sources. And so it's hard to say now, because for sure, much more than 3 gigawatts. The point is to understand also how the evolution of because we don't need capacity, we need energy. And we know perfectly that in 10 years' time, in the wind energy, the same machine are generating something like from 50% to 100% more. In any case, obviously, there is a huge potential in Dobruja that for the time being, I remember very well 10 years ago that was judged the second wind hub in Europe for onshore. But we are also delighted to hear also from Mr. Badescu that there is also chances for offshore wind. That is another huge important element to be brought to the table. Also, I would say, also in a different perspective, because as European country, we at the Europe level, we are convinced that there are also chances to use the energy not only for the country that is hosting the plants, but because this energy can flow through the grids. I thank Corina for his reminder about the needs of investment, not only in the grid in the country, but also for interconnection that are key. And we know there are some countries like the Dutch that are very interested to foreign project, because probably they know that it's impossible to exploit renewable in their own country in order to achieve those targets whatsoever. So in this respect, I would say there is an untapped potential. I wouldn't focus on figures, because in my opinion, it's more important to focus on an enabler in order to develop renewable, as I said before, rather than now saying some figures, depending, because in 10 years' time, we are expecting also a further growth in terms of technology that might also reduce the capacity needed if you look the energy that they are going to produce. Thanks for the question, Edith.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Carlo Pignoloni. We will come back because this area of the wind energy, the Black Sea, is quite new. We have a solid survey drafted recently. Now I'd like to greet Mr. Petre Stroie, the country manager at Romania Energy. I'm glad to have you here, Mr. Stroie, and I'd like to give you the floor for the initial intervention, 7 to 10 minutes, to hear the key messages for today's Energy Strategy Summit. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. There are representatives in this panel of important companies with multiple possibilities. Our company, MET, is a medium-sized company in the energy field, has planned to contribute in the field of investments according to its status and position. It's very clear for me, and I convinced the shareholders that the suitable investment mix for our country in this period in which in a short time we became from net exporters, we became net importers of electric energy and also natural gas. The suitable mix is an investment in a cogeneration plant using natural gas and a renewable production plant. This mix, from all the calculations performed by me and all simulations, could operate to get having only one exit to the grid with the balancing which is already created, and being driven by the crisis which we didn't get out of. I hope that the European funds, but also our own effort, will lead to the implementation of such a project starting next year. It's clear that our energy system needs this, but it's even more clearer than a supplier which doesn't have a vertical integration at the relevant size cannot survive on the market. This is why, besides the IT and digitalization systems, which are a must, the production is absolutely necessary in the current landscape of our system. From this point of view, things are clear for us. Here I would mention the people, the training of the people. We have dealt with since our company emerged on the market, and I should say that for us the human resource is more important than the material resource. And the results have been seen each time. There were ambitious young people who occupied in a short term recognized position in the landscape of our system. Thank you. Thank you. And we will remain with you now, since we have 2-3 questions for which you could give us an answer. The first question is quite technical with a lot of figures. How do you explain the spot price for gas for $180 for the 1,000 of cubic meters compared to the average of 80? Well, a short answer is I cannot explain. Then we need a longer answer. The fluctuations of the price of natural gas can be explained by significant changes regarding the regulations and it can be explained through a strategy that the gas producers have. And last but not least, by the activity, which is hard to understand, of some suppliers. And I would stop here. Well, I understand. And there is another question for which I'd like to have an answer from you. Starting 2030, it is planned not to burn fossil fuel, and this is in contradiction with POIM 6.4 referring to high efficiency cogeneration. How do you see this from this perspective? I believe Mr. Stroy can give us an answer. I believe in a readjustment of these objectives, because it's clear that if you set up an objective, it has to be validated by the reality, by the market. So this validation can be transformed into an invalidation. Therefore, the objectives can be changed in time. There must be flexibility in implementing a strategy. My opinion is that there will be changes. In fact, the natural gas is a resource which is polluting, but not to such an extent that would give it up without replacing it with something else. And I believe that what would be the replacement, this is a different discussion. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Popescu to give a few details regarding your opinion on the role of Electrica regarding the transition. A company like the Electrica Group is well placed to play an important role, but please give us a few details. Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in the strategy approved last year, for the next period, Electrica would like to be also active in the production field. We have two big directions. Projects for acquiring already existing production. What happened last year is a first step, a small step. In parallel, we look into the development of new projects in the field of green energy, of course. And this would be what we aimed for the transition for production as regards the distribution, because in the new legislative package the distributors are more active as aggregators, and I've seen a law draft which is under debate in the parliament that they define the new notions of aggregator and storage. We will look into this function and we will develop these new functions towards the distribution operator. We are now in a project of redefining this business sector and regarding the three distribution operators, to merge the three distributors, because the investments for digitalization should prove their efficiency and prove the return that should be more efficient than before. The major investments on digitalization should be done once and not to replicate them three times in order for the customer not to pay three times for the same thing as it would be if the operators would be three instead of one. And also in the transition period, because the distributor will also play an active role, aggregate a new role. Like Carlos said, there will be new possibilities of balancing to be able to implement a larger green solution. And as regards the services of supply, we would like to change our face from a simple supplier of electric energy to an integrated supplier. Thank you for the answer. I have three questions for the other three participants and one for you from a friend who follows the English feed. I will read the question in English and Mrs. Popescu, please answer in Romanian. It depends on what the PPA offers. If the PPA is a solid business case for the supply part, why not? But what I'd like to say is that we won't limit ourselves to signing the PPA, but we would like to have the own production in the group in order to use a word which so to be able to have a hedging, so the hedging towards the final end user should not be only in one source. So we shouldn't focus only on PP, but we or transactions on the exchange. We want to have also the on production. So the hedging should reduce the risks if we supply energy to the end consumer. Now I have a question to Mr. Bada, which is quite concrete for Hidroelectrica. after the floods in 2008, there were discussions on investing on the River Prut. Nothing has been done. Do you have in mind an agreement with the Republic of Moldova? Like I said, the agreements with neighboring countries have a political component. After the political will is materialized in an agreement, the implementation can be performed, and Hidroelectrica would like to be the main partner of the state in transborder projects that aim to use the hydro potential. So we are open to a collaboration if a project on the Prut River can be performed. Now we focus on what we have in our country, and the situation is similar. And if the floods come, and if we see that if the hydrographic potential is not engineered, so we understand the importance of the engineering of the riverbeds and the production of the energy, which is so important.
And the question for Mr. Carlo Pignoloni now about developing the wind energy systems in the Black Sea area. Someone asked whether there is a survey for the offshore wind energy. Yes, there is such a survey by the World Bank. It was launched a few weeks ago. It's worth studying it because it's very interesting. What's your opinion, Mr. Pignoloni, about this opportunity of developing wind systems in the Black Sea area? Do you see the opportunity for other companies to enter the Romanian wind sector, or is it a better opportunity in the offshore system?
No, definitely the offshore, even though we are talking about onshore, offshore, the technology is definitely different in the sense that obviously the machines are different and whatsoever, the level of investment are higher. I would say that, broadly speaking, it's an opportunity for the country. In the sense, as has been also already asked, might attract some other players for this kind of technology that is widely developed in the northern countries of Europe, for instance. Now also in the United States they started. Definitely yes, because. From one end is another technology, another area in which might develop. We know in any case that now I don't want to bother you with data, but there is surely a huge potential in terms of wind. And I would say also the morphology of the sea is quite suitable, not a big, there is a lot of shallow water that is allowing also to have this kind of plants complying with some environmental rules. I would say there is also a synergy with the development of this kind of project, with also the onshore ones, because I already told you Dobruja is probably widely the area in which there is the biggest potential for wind, but there is a lack of interconnection. And definitely, especially for the capacity that is very, very big for the offshore, in order to allow the investment, because it's a matter obviously of the capex ratio. This is an occasion for the country itself also to attract some EU funds in order to strengthen, to revisit completely the grid. And obviously the TSO should be involved. So Transelectrica definitely that is already, let's say, struggling in order to accommodate the current capacity, also the future one. But obviously having in mind this kind of development, probably I'm going to change also the strategy about the design of the future high voltage grid over there. So definitely it's a huge occasion for the country. I strongly endorse this chance also for this purpose, widen a little bit the interest of also foreign players that are maybe stronger in that kind of field. I finished.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pignoloni, for your answer. I had one more question for Mr. Petre Stroe. I'm glad to see him among us. He's got the picture as well. I'll be reading the question as it was phrased. There are several industrial platforms in Romania where several companies operate. Those companies are forced to overcharge the structure. And when the network owner doesn't have the license, things are difficult. How can we improve things from this standpoint? I admit that I didn't quite understand the question. I understood it. We've got a legal situation here. We're talking about those platforms which only accommodated one single consumer in the past. But because of the chaotic privatization, several companies, 2 or 3 companies emerged on those platforms, several consumers in sometimes. Whereas there is only one interconnection, and the 2 or 3 consumers share their role as an interface between the supplier and the other consumers. This interface sometimes stops the money due for consumption, stores the money from those who are not directly interconnected. And here occur some legal situations which can be settled. From my point of view, we need a very clear regulation in this respect. Because if there are several consumers on a platform, it's not likely for each of them to have their own connection. But we definitely need regulation to establish them as consumers. For instance, any company having a connection there needs to be assigned as a consumer. There are some metalwork companies connected to such platforms that is very important, and reliable consumers able to pay for their consumption, but which chose to pay their consumption through third-party companies. And this is why the money is blocked somewhere in the middle. And this causes issues and impossible situations for the energy supplier. This is why clear regulation is needed. The situation is simple, but quick measures need to be taken, because otherwise everything is chaotic in the field. Thank you, Mr. Stroe, for your answer. And the last question asked to Mr. Bogdan Badea and to Mrs. Popescu. We talk a lot about wind energy, but I didn't hear comments about energy from solar sources. What do we need for those new capacities to be working? Are you interested? Is your company interested to work in solar energy projects? Please, Mr. Badea. Thank you for your question. As the strategy puts it, solar projects are within the scope of Hidroelectrica. We've got several development lines in this respect, either development on the market or developing our own projects in areas where Hidroelectrica holds exceeding or too much land. We want to develop solar projects at the surface of waters, which is a challenge for us, and we want to go on for such a pilot project. We are eager to see how it works. That would be a second interest area for us to diversify our production portfolio after the wind energy sector. The offshore wind energy is a priority for us as well, we are willing to invest in this area. This is a potential Romania hasn't capitalized so far, and it's much room so far in Romania to develop wind projects. It's true we need to understand this phenomenon at all the levels, transport, distribution, production, so that those new capacities can be integrated in the system. This has been done everywhere in the European countries, which is much more developed than Romania in terms of technology. But this is a matter of specialization, of regulation, and it's all relying on ourselves. If we've got the know-how and the willingness, we'll do it. Please, Mrs. Popescu, the same question or a question about PPAs and hydroelectrica, but about solar energy. Please do. We were busy with the solar panel last week. And what about the new capacities? Hydroelectrica is willing to develop new capacities, of course. We don't want to have a portfolio for one single resource, that is the wind energy, but we'd like to have a flexible portfolio, including solar energy and wind energy. Thank you so much, Mrs. Popescu. We are close, or we already reached the end of this first session. Unfortunately, I cannot get back for a conclusion from yourselves. We need to be very strict with the time frame in this Energy Strategy Summit. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Thank you for the precious information you've been conveying to us. And thank you for your answers provided to the need we all have those connected on the My Connector platform. Thank you so much for your intervention.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
For a few dozens of seconds, we'll be with you for the end of this first session of the Energy Strategy Summit. We kindly invite you to stay with us for the rest of the day until close to 6 p.m. when we'll be closing the Energy Summit for today. We now have around 30 minutes until the second session starts. We'll then have an important number of significant professionals who will talk about technologies in these areas and rather about gas. We'll have Transgaz, the ROPEP, BCR and Team Complex among the speakers for the second session, and Mr. Daniel Apostol, Foreign Relationship Manager in KPBG as a moderator. We'll also have Mrs. Christine Vercher, CEO from OMV Petrom, as a keynote speaker later. So please stay with us and we'll get live later. Until then, please use the online socializing opportunities provided by this platform. You can get in dialogue and into contact with the 50 people online there. You can share visit cards, we can write there, and you can also launch some video sessions if you want to have a little bit of talk. So that's all for now, and we get back online at 11:15.
Good morning. Welcome again in the Energy Strategy Summit, the edition of 2020. It's atypical, completely online, but with all advantages. And I discussed previously with one of our guests this obligation to observe the time, which makes so that the entire summit will happen very quickly. According to the agenda, we have the intervention of Mrs. Cristina Vercher, country manager of OMV Petrom. I'm honored to greet her and give her the floor for the intervention prepared for today. Good morning, Mrs. Vercher. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation to take part in a very important debate. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I hope that each of you and your families are healthy and well in these very unusual times. In the first half of the year, the pandemic infected and affected the entire world at a rapid pace, caused an unprecedented humanitarian crisis, and unleashed an economic recession in a very short amount of time. And as we speak, the number of infections worldwide have jumped over the 10 million mark. And in some countries, including here in Romania, the upward trend in the number of cases seems to be picking up again, which may hinder the much expected recovery. It has profoundly impacted the economic activity. Worldwide, we see that many companies are requesting loans or bailouts, and technical unemployment has risen substantially. To keep things from getting worse, governments are deploying huge amounts of money to stimulate economies. In the meantime, the post-lockdown picture reveals significant aftershocks in the economy. Consumers must deal with lower disposable income, small businesses are struggling for survival, and industrial production is taking a hit. So we are all impacted in this situation. Despite reduced demand that caused huge oversupply concerns and price shocks, energy production proved once again to be a strong contributor to the backbone of this economy. Ensuring access to an uninterrupted supply of gas, electricity, and fuel has helped the economies to function while overcoming what seemed to be, and we hope, the worst of this crisis. During all of this time, we at OMV Petrom have provided energy to homes, hospitals, and businesses. Since the outbreak, our main priority has been the health and safety of our employees and our customers while continuing operations without interruptions. This really underpins the essential role that energy companies play in society, while at the same time as the entire energy sector is preparing for a series of profound changes itself. Nowadays, post-lockdown, a strong debate over designing a stimulus and innovation package to reshape the economies is gaining momentum both at the national and at the European level. In the center of this debate, we see the continued need to accelerate to low-carbon energy production as a measure to mitigate climate change. The energy transition is a one-way highway, and the one the energy sector started to pursue long before the pandemic erupted. It's very obvious that modern life is heading more and more towards lower carbon and more energy efficient consumption. Here at OMV Petrom, there are three main directions we are focusing on as we go down this road. One is reducing the carbon footprint of our own operations. Through sustained investments, we have managed a 22% reduction. Second, and what we see as probably the most significant, is that natural gas will play a key role in the transition to lower carbon energy, which makes gas projects such as Neptune Deep vital for Romania's energy security supply and carbon footprint reduction. And I'll come back to this and more on this in a minute. The third one is education. Companies cannot do this alone. We need to work together, businesses, governments, and consumers, to make a difference by becoming more energy efficient. And last year, we launched the România Eficientă program to support this. What the energy transition will look like for Romania will depend largely on stimulating private investments. Stimulating investments in new technologies and local resources must be blended with digitization projects and with stable and fiscal legislative framework. We believe all technologies which are able to achieve significant emissions reductions shall be part of the solution. There is no one solution, but it's the change in energy mix that will enable us to reach the goal of a lower carbon footprint. We are prepared to invest in making the energy transition as smooth as possible. To this end, gas will be the most valuable asset for Romania in the next decade. Natural gas will significantly contribute to the reduction of the CO2 footprint in all major carbon-intensive sectors, namely heating, transport, and power generation. It can contribute to the energy transition through lower carbon power generation, complementing the growing share of renewables. We also believe in the added value of tailor-made and market-specific solutions to include the whole value chain of natural gas. Romania's voice has been present in the EU-level debate on the allocation of resources. However, efforts in that regard can and should be improved in order to maximize our opportunities in this context. As an energy company, we aim to be part of the solution together with the authorities and the consumers. Worldwide, we see gas as the fuel of choice in the energy transition due to its lower carbon emissions, affordability, capacity of being stored, and availability. Using mature and scalable technologies, natural gas is one of the most cost-efficient choice to flatten the curve of greenhouse gas emissions. We highlighted a few examples of these applications in the sustainability report of OMV Petrom for 2019, which we published today. We showed the important role played by the Brazi power plant, which provides standby capacity to meet the demand when renewable energy is not available. Its great level of flexibility can balance other variable resources in the energy mix. This could ease the energy transition both in terms of meeting demand, but also enable increase in renewable power generation capabilities and capacities. Cogeneration and gas to power are two other proven applications used to reduce carbon emissions. In Romania, natural gas is the most important primary energy source, representing over 30% of the primary energy production. In the meantime, Romania faces a decline in terms of gas production after more than 100 years of continuous production. These two facts should set the scene for encouraging investment in gas projects and for putting in place the right infrastructure to support them. In order to ensure continuity of gas production, a liberalized gas market, transport infrastructure, and predictable and coherent legislation are the main prerequisites for generating investments and allowing development of big new gas projects. As I have said many times before, Romania has an opportunity few countries in the world have with the gas resources in the Black Sea. Shaping as a long-term investment, this will have a spillover effect in the economy, which translates into sustainable development, jobs, budget revenues. I believe Deloitte's estimated this at 1.2 billion euro per year during exploitation, and most importantly, improving the living standards of Romanian society. Having its own energy production, Romania may benefit from a high degree of energy security while having a low amount of carbon emissions. In the absence of the Black Sea resources, Romania will struggle in meeting its climate goals and energy demand. To this end, EU funding for gas infrastructure projects needs to be increased in order to maximize the potential of new gas operations. A developed gas infrastructure displays a level of commitment by the Romanian state to the gas resource, which in turn would highly aid investors' confidence in the Romanian gas market and potential, not just for exploitation, but for applied uses such as CNG and transportation, hydrogen, and so forth. To enable the development of Black Sea gas resources, authorities should urgently address several topics. Gas market liberalization, in parallel with protection for the vulnerable customers, elimination of supplementary tax, and amendments to the offshore law. We remain very keen to see Neptune Deep being developed. The final investment decisions depends on several key prerequisites, which include the offshore law, which for today we still see no progress. To conclude, let me summarize with three important takeaways I would like to leave you with. It is very important, firstly, it is very important for the government and business to work together in order to restart the economy. A sustainable economic development must be accompanied by increased energy security, and the energy sector can be part and one of the important engines for economic recovery. Secondly, in order to achieve energy security, Romania needs the gas resources from the Black Sea. Otherwise, we will increase our dependency on imports, which some estimate could reach as much as 40% of imports by 2030. And third, gas will also ensure for the Romanian economy the capacity to respond to the climate change agenda, a key goal in the next period. That concludes my comments. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vercher, for this message, which explains the opinions of your group on this topic. We've got 3 or 4 minutes to ask some questions to you. One of them is about the availability of the OMV Petrom to come back into the green energy field. Was it an attempt? It was an attempt a few years ago, and things seem to be different at the present. Is it an area you are looking forward to?
So with regards to, I think what we say is with regards to sort of green energy. I mean, you do see we are looking very much at sort of biogas. We'll look at biofuels and how to sort of reduce the footprint of the products that we provide to the consumer right now. With regards to sort of the overall energy mix, we believe hugely that our biggest contribution that we can play to Romanian society actually is through the development of natural gas. We will continue to look at other options, of course, but our big focus, as you can imagine, is the 400-pound gorilla of Neptune Deep that we have for us.
Thank you so much. There's the dominant question over the 4 years about developing the Black Sea project. At the beginning of this year, you said for the very first time, you used a phrase, this is not a matter of when, but it has become a matter of if this project still comes into reality. How do you see things right now from a political point of view? No important legislation shift will be by the end of the year. How do you see things now?
Yeah. It's a really important point, and actually, you will know I don't say too much, and I'm thoughtful about what I do say and when I say it. So it was there because I think we need to realize this is a huge opportunity for Romania, but it will not stay there forever. With the energy transition coming, with the valuation of natural gas prices, etc., we need to realize there is a point in time when this is the most valuable for Romania and for the Romanian state as well. So in the end, what we're looking at in the world is competing energy sources. To get the climate change agenda met, what we are actually seeing is supply issues and abundance of supply in the world, both in the fossil fuel side, but also with renewables coming in. And there's competition in the market. So Romania needs to be competitive of that. And this is why we put that statement out, very, very thoughtfully put that statement out, was this doesn't have all the time forever. We need to get moving. And I'll be honest, I've said this before, I think we get to some degree stuck in the political system. So we were keen to work with the authorities. We want to see this move forward. And we're very clear we want to see changes in the offshore law to enable that.
Thank you, ma'am. One last question to get used as much as possible of this time. The OMV Petrom group was very active in terms of petrochemical cogeneration. And my question is, for the next 5 to 7 years, which of those areas is the most interesting for Petrom? Cogeneration, petrochemical industry, hydrogen, and carbon storage?
Yeah. So I think to some, they have different roles. I think they're all of interest to OMV Petrom. Petrochemicals, we have been looking at some projects in petrochemicals around the Petrobras facility to look at that and doing some feasibility studies. With regards to cogeneration and carbon capture and storage, these and hydrogen, these are earlier in their sort of in their thinking and more nuanced and in the earlier stages of it, but they are areas of interest to us overall. I think one of the big things that we would say is, and I think I mentioned this in my words, is we believe in the value chain with regards to the development of natural gas. And we believe in that for Romania. For us, actually, to provide and make sure the natural gas is available, if either it's ourselves or it's others within Romania that choose to take that further down the value chain, that's good. In the end, we want to make sure the natural gas is here to meet the Romanian market and make sure the Romanian market is supplied. Further opportunities in industrialization can be done by us and can be done by others as well.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Vercher, CEO OMV Petrom, for this idea synthesis and for your answers. We are ready now to be us, Energynomics, an important platform delivering information from customers to large companies which are so influential in the energetic sector. So Mrs. Cristina Vercher had an intervention right now, and we are heading for the second session, Strategies for Investments. This is financing new projects. This is the title of our second plenary session. We thank our panelists we invite our current panelists to turn on their cameras so that they can be visible. As you saw during the first session of the day, each guest will have first interval of 7 to 10 minutes. Those whose names are above my name prepared some PPT presentations. Mr. Daniel Apostol from the Oil and Gas Employers Federation will be the moderator. Good morning, Gabriel. Thank you so much for the opportunity you gave us to join one of the most important energy events in the first quarter of the year, of the first half year. It's important for us to draw the conclusions of the first year and to establish the path for the rest of the year. I'm sure our Oil and Gas Employers Federation is an important partner for you. After Mrs. Verscher's keynote speech, we'll have a new panel and we'll have opinions from Transgaz, Romgaz, so two important players on the market. Then one of our colleagues will intervene in the digitalization panel with her expertise. First and foremost, I greet my colleagues from the industry, Mrs. Elisabeta Ghidia from Transgaz, the strategic department. Welcome, ma'am. Hello, Ramona Hurgo from the Romanian Commercial Bank. It's important for us to have finance people among us. Hello, and thank you for your invitation. And we've got Mr. Robert Kirk, Deputy CEO at Romgaz. Good morning, sir. Thank you for this invitation and for this opportunity. Mr. Teodor Chiric, member of the board.
O precizare. Chirica, nu Chirica.
Chirica. My name is Chirica, not Chirica. Sorry. I won't mistake your name anymore. Welcome, sir. So Stephen Birrell, the president of the Onshore Producers Association, ROPEPCA, is with us. Mr. Birrell, I'm glad you are with us today.
Bună dimineața. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting us. Looking forward to this opportunity to talk about investment in Romania, and very enthused with the message that Ms. Verscheri gave from OMV Petrom, and Ropetca absolutely backs the majority of that message.
And last but not least, Mr. Adrian Dumitriu, the CFO from Kim Complex. Good morning, Adrian. We are heading towards noon, so we can also say good day, good afternoon. Hello, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for this invitation. I'm honored to be among you today and to discuss those important topics for relaunching economy. The economy has been so much affected by the pandemics, and investments are vital. Yes, you're right. We need to rebuild the economy, to relaunch the economy after the pandemics, and the vital element is given by investments, the expenses for capital. We saw the expenses for the first 5 months, the largest level of public investment over the last 10 years, balanced by the lowest foreign investment over the last years because of the economic lockdown. So we've got new financing of new projects into view, the means to rerun the energetic system, the energetic sector, and everybody knows the position of the Oil and Gas Employers Federation about the need of urgent unblock of the major investments in the area. Robert Chirica, the CEO from Romgaz, The web floor is yours, sir. Thank you so much. Can you hear my present? Can you see my presentation? Thank you so much for inviting me. We are now talking about investment, about development, about things which are a real and very beneficial mechanism for relaunching the Romanian economy. Just as the other companies, Romgaz is on the same path. We are currently trying to get focused on relaunching the economy given the current situation. If we look at the market, we had a very mild winter. We have a lower consumption. We are at 50% of our potential. Half of our facilities are closed down because of the general lockdown, and we are trying to find some alternatives for the distribution of gas, just to close the chain from raw materials until the gas we supply, so that we can have an added value. Our strategic directions we are heading to over the next period is beyond new opportunities for growth and diversification. We also want to increase and diversify the current portfolio. We are talking about reducing the production decline, and we need to modernize our current facilities. The strategy proposed by Romgaz in the next future, this is a very ambitious strategy. We are talking about the next 5 years with more than 15.5 billion RON that we want to assign for investments. For gas production, we are talking about power production. We are attempting and we are wishing to deal with petrochemicals. We are talking about a methanol facility or station, and we are also considering various partnerships. In terms of gas production, there are two directions. On the one hand, modernizing our current stations, digitalization, so that we can take a step forward towards the third millennium. The electricity production, we are currently working on a project. It's about to be completed, the Jedmund. It has been built up to 90%, and by the end of this year, we'll be completing this project so that we can start producing electric power through this turbine-based plant, so that we can fully use our production capacity. We're also talking about power production. We are learning from the past lessons. We try to develop our facilities, and we take steps towards the new central, the Mitria. The feasibility study has already been done, and the technical team is about to perform the latest technical analyses so that we can initiate this project as well. We are talking about petrochemicals. In this respect, we wish to go through. We are analyzing the opportunity of initiating a methanol topic.
If we look at the added value and the potential of methanol is quite important. We're talking about a production of a few hundreds of thousands of tons per year. We have associations and partnerships in various stages. As we have seen in the press some weeks ago, a memorandum was signed together with Liberty. We try to use production potential to the maximum to perform this transition where the gas plays an important role to make it as beneficial and advantageous for our company and to Romania. In this strategy, there are a few uncertainties. On one hand, the prediction of the market, the pandemic, where the market is quite unstable. And at the same time, there are the part that can help us quite a lot is the legislative framework. Like our colleague said, it would be very helpful to be for the period of the implementation of the strategy to be as short as possible and the accuracy degree to be the highest. In general, a strategy is based on a few basic elements. Namely, I'm talking about financing. Based on the estimations and analyses performed, Romgaz can cover up to 50% of these investments from own sources. The rest of 50%, for this, we try to find opportunities on the market. If we talk about loans or European funds to cover the entire range. This is, in short, the strategy and the plans. Well, indeed, you complied with the time constraint. It's an important thing mentioned about the need of investments. If a producer like Romgaz is confronted with the decline and the market uncertainties, both locally and at the global level, and attempt to improve the accuracy of the regulatory framework. I give the floor now to Mrs. Nikio. We have an experience regarding a major investment, the Brua pipeline from Transgaz. We always expect the elements regarding the development of the national gas transport system and the investments. Elisabetta, you have the floor. Please open the microphone. The technical part is difficult. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to greet you all who are present here because the Energy Summit is an event of high professionalism, and it is the 6th edition. We try to debate all the issues which are related to the activity of the energy sector. You talked about Brua. Everyone knows about it. Transgaz is now responsible with most of the building sites in Romania. I wanted to show you a presentation, but the practice and involvement in such projects made me speak freely. In the past, there was a question mark about its realization, but Brua is close to the completion. At the half of July, we will open the 3rd station of compressing in Bibești. Last year, Jopa and Podișor were opened, and on the 1st of October, the linear line will be finished. Regarding the other projects, because not only Brua is the highway between Muntenia and Banat, it is the highway the Romanians have been waiting for a long time. It is the transport infrastructure is very important for creating a modern economy. Why do we invest? It is very important to know a decision for investment is very important, and it has a huge managerial load. And I'm saying this for the other project, Podișor, close to the seashore. waiting for the resources from the Black Sea. Transgaz has in its plan to have a pipeline to Polish shore, for which we made the first steps. The funding is ensured up to 50%, and it is in the tendering stage for the execution works in order to prepare the infrastructure. It depends, of course, on the open season procedure and these decisions. So we're talking about major projects. We're talking about the developments in the northeastern part, which enable the connection with the pipeline Ungen Chișinău. Transgaz is the first transnational company having operations in the Republic of Moldova between Ungen and Chișinău. And such projects are developed in order to be able to ensure the necessary capacities for the Republic of Moldova through this pipeline. The other projects are major projects comprised in the development plan. On the 1st of August, we will go with them to ANRE for approval. They comprise these major projects, and a very important thing for the challenges of Transgaz, beyond these strategic projects that enable an interconnection with neighboring countries, and it increases the possibility of energy security. It is a challenge. Romania is the fourth producer of gas in the EU, but it has only 35% of the households connected to gas, because there is an objective to double this percentage to 70%. It's very important to know that 3 years ago has performed research for each of the regions of the country for in a development strategy, and now according to the extension of SNT, we discuss with the county councils, the general manager, together with the management and the specialists in this field, have initiated direct meetings on the building sites and to see how the strategies are according to the reality in the field, and how we can connect all localities to the network of natural gas. We can discuss a lot about projects. I try to focus on a few points, and then I can answer your questions. It's easier then. What is essential is the fact that there's a need for a strategic planning and an urgent development of such projects. It's very important to be attentive to this. The financing mix is ensured for BRUA, it's ensured fully for the Black Sea Shore 50%, and the funding is a funding mix that ensures the lowest cost for such investments. We're talking about own resources, 35% attracted, or foreign courses, 38% allocated on the projects for the next 10 years. We don't exclude, considering the climate neutrality and the context and the entire activity of the transport and system companies must be aligned to this. We are also concerned by the research studies regarding the hydrogen, and I'm talking about a study on the possibility of accepting a mix of up to 2% mix in the national transport system, and the possibility of introducing it. We have it in our research program for 2020, and we want to see what it means. Everything is new. This is what I wanted to tell you, and now I'm open for questions. Thank you very much for this intervention and this presentation. It's very well that you made a review of the investment plans of Transgas. We know the importance of a connection with the Black Sea. We're talking about Broa 2, Podișor, Tuzla. Now, we remain in a way in the same geographic area. We don't go away from Dobroja, and I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Chirica, the member of the board of Nuclear Electrica, which is the strategy of investments and how his company and which is the plan for the future. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. I have an presentation which started with thank you. The nuclear energy is a strategic component in Romania, and we find it in the government program and in the energy strategy and in the national integrated plan. The reaching of the environmental targets cannot be done without nuclear energy together with the other technologies with low carbon emissions. Of course, right now we see that in the famous taxonomy, the limit of 100 grams of emissions CO2 per kilowatt hour and the probability of evaluating the risks of nuclear power by the technicians of the EU, the gas and nuclear have an unstable situation. And I would like to talk to the oil and gas people. Maybe we should get to know each other better because we have joint interests. In my opinion, the energy future of Europe cannot exist without renewables, but also nuclear power. The EU reduced the gas emissions going from coal to gas, but now the nuclear energy is clean, so we have a plus point. Now, coming back to our topic, we have an investment program from July 2020 to July 2025. This investment program amounts to 2.3 billion lei. And separately, I will discuss about the large projects for revamping the installation 1 and the installations, and a few words about the units. In this investment strategy for 5 years, we have the biannual revisions of units 1 and 2, which have a component of an overhaul. We will double the lifetime of the units. Our policy is to do everything possible in advance in the planned stoppages, because we have now a planned stoppage in order to have a flatter curve of the financial investments and of the labor force. Another interesting project is the production of cobalt 160. It is a procedure that is found at all CANDU units, not only in Canada. It has also applications in the sterilization of medical equipment and food, and it also brings a financial component. We continue our modular projects, which are an ongoing activity with the intermediate deposits of burned fuel. We have the improvement of the physical protection. It is an ongoing issue, not only for nuclear plants, also for oil. We are a preferred target. The change of the destination of Unit 5, which from the analysis of the evacuation of power and cooling water is not necessary in the development of nuclear electrica. And this structure will be transformed into a structure that will improve the response of the plant using the lessons learned at Fukushima. Another interesting project, which is a larger one, is the installation of the treatation of the heavy water by taking a neutron, deuterium, an isotope. It is transformed into a tritium, which is radioactive. So in this case, the moderator is cleaned and the level of radioactivity is reduced, and the impact on the environment. But we also ease the revamping operations. So it is also a project of modernizing the IT infrastructure in nuclear electrica. A short overview: units 1 and 2, tritium removal. This must be done 1 year before the refurbishment of Unit 1 with the cleaning of tritium. This will happen in up to 2036. They will gain another 30 years of operation. The impact of the nuclear energy in general, not only nuclear electrica, together with a study performed by Deloitte for Atom, there are more than 12,000 jobs and a contribution to the GDP of Romania of 5.7 billion euro. So we have many companies who work in foreign nuclear projects as a labor force and hardware production. We represent 33% of the clean energy. As perspectives after 2035, we think about modular reactors, but we don't forget the units 3 and 4. Unit 3 will start by 2020, and Unit 4 after 2030. To see the cycle of fuel, we start from mining, concentrate, milling and concentrate, conversion, purification. Then it goes to the fuel factory, the reactor of Chernobyl. We also import EO2. We will import also U308, and then the burned fuel is stored in the intermediate storages. The low and medium radioactive have a certain regime of storage, and finally they will be sent to the final disposal unit. And the decommissioning of these units will create an important part of radioactive waste, which will go to the same storage. We have also behind us the Romanian and international horizontal industry. Coming back to the projects, I was talking about the diversification. I wanted to touch upon the topic of diversification. Nuclear electrica, in order to preserve the supply with raw materials, wants to take over the license of the mine of Tulgeș, together with submitting an offer for taking over part of the shares for the conversion and the purifying of uranium oxide.
Major projects is to extend the lifespan of the first unit. We are in the first stage now. The first stage project and some of the second stage one are included in this 5-year plan. And this is the preparing plan. The general entrepreneur will be chosen, the licenses will be obtained, the strategy will be made. the licenses will be obtained from the relevant authorities, and by the 31st of December, they will be launched into operation for 2 years. If the current projects will be funded through our own funds, the re-technologization project, which is estimated up to 1 billion or 1,200,000 euros, will need a mix of our own funds and attracted funds. About the third and the fourth project in Chernavoda, you know very well that the negotiations were closed with the Chinese company, and of course we found the solution of going on, except that we don't have a solution yet. We need to present the strategy to our shareholders and what we intend to do, and then we can be even more transparent. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Chirica. I noted down some of your ideas. When we'll get into the question and answer session at the end of this panel, we'll see what questions we have from our attendees. But I'm glad we have our former colleagues from Europepca with us. This is the association representing the offshores by its president, Mr. Birrell.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the translator. It's great to be amongst this panel. I heard some really interesting things from the other people, all very important to investment in Romania and launching or relaunching the economy. So a couple of words about Europepca. We were founded in 2012 and we have 15 members, and between 2014 and 2019 our members have invested over 5.5 billion euros into projects. That equated to a contribution of about 11.8 billion euros to the state, and we account for around about 14,000 employees. These numbers are from 2019. So that's who Europepca is. We represent the upstream oil and gas industry in Romania. But just before I go into some more things about sustainability and investment, I think it's important to understand the legacy we have here. Romania's history and legacy is that since 1857, Romania has produced oil, and since 1908 has produced gas. And within Europe, we're one of the biggest hydrocarbon producers. We sit alongside the UK, Netherlands and Norway. And that's a very important position for us to hold, given the importance of energy security. And as mentioned earlier by Ms. Verscheri of OMV Petrom, the importance of gas within the transition to a low carbon economy. The next point I would like to touch on is demand and supply. It's very easy to be myopic and just look at Europe, but actually, if you look at the world, the EIA predicts or projects that there will be a 50% increase in the demand for energy up until 2050, and that hydrocarbons, fossil fuels, but particularly oil and gas, will be 49% of that. So that's the world stage. And in terms of Europe, and in terms of Romania, Romania currently imports about 12.5% of its gas consumption and 87% of its oil. So focusing on Romania, what we need is investment to continue to support the economy and to produce and provide energy security.
Mr. Beryl, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but your mic keeps on touching your shirt. So could you just clip it a little bit higher so that it just hangs up in the air without touching anything? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that intervention. I've just adjusted that. My apologies to people listening and for that interference.
It's all right. Thank you very much.
So earlier this year, prior to COVID, ROPEPCA had issued a roadmap for investment in the industry that presented to the government and to the parliament the need for a modernised legislative framework, fiscal stability, medium and long-term vision, less bureaucratic operations, transparency of documentation, including declassification, communication between ourselves and the stakeholders, and land access operations. And then following the release of that roadmap, we were taken down by COVID-19, and our members have been discussing how we can help relaunch the economy, and we've recently sent a roadmap to the government discussing how the members of ROPEPCA in the upstream can support investment. We need to restart the economy. That means investment, whether it be local or coming from outside, international, foreign. But to do that, we need openness to business. We need a stable fiscal and legal framework which we can operate in. We need less bureaucracy for our operations. We need a return to liberal market mechanisms, a free market, so that we can operate within a level playing field. And currently, I think we need to be looking at various fiscal stimulus for the operators so that they continue to get on with business. And that's the kind of message which I would like to give for the investment in Romania. I think the message that Ms. Verscheri gave was very much the same message. I haven't much more to say, but we support that message. We need liberalisation, we need free markets, we need digitalisation, we need less bureaucracy, and we need to work with the government to get Romania back in business as we emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Birrell, for your intervention. You reminded us, you were very clear about this need that the overall industry gets a new regulation framework, including the fiscal regulations. We need stability, we need less bureaucracy for a free market. Those are all vital requirements for foreign investors to be attracted to Romania. We'd like foreign investors to consider Romania an important country for such investments. Let's go on and see a finance person's opinion facing the issues raised by the energy sector in terms of strategic, the investment strategy and the need to get funding resources. This is why I invite Mrs. Ramona Curco, the utilities manager at BCR, about corporate banking. Thank you so much for your invitation. I am honored to attend every single edition of your event because I'd like to hear from our clients in the industry. I dare to say that investments are an important topic and a hot topic, but it's a permanent hot topic. We are talking about how needed investments are in this area. And we are talking not only about new capacities to receive investments, but also about re-technologization. we as finance people have waited forward for such funding opportunities from BCR. This is not only the second largest bank in the system, but it's also one of the most important funders for the energy sectors. And I was glad to hear and to listen from, to see our most important customers in the first and the second sessions of your event. Now, in this year's context, the context is quite peculiar. We as a bank had an important direction so that our clients may preserve their financial health and also to preserve our employees' physical health. We wanted to preserve a stable environment for our bank as much as we could. But under those circumstances, the energetics system, the energetic sector, kept being a strategic field for us. The bank kept making business throughout this time. The energy sector has been a priority for us as well, and yet our CEO said 1 month earlier that in March and April, BCR approved funding of more than 500 million euros for mainly 3 sectors. We can place the Romanian economy into the highest competition. The 3 sectors are energy, the most expensive tickets approved during the first half of the year, the agriculture, and the food industry were the funded industries in Romania. And we'd like to continue doing this because it's obvious that the economic relaunch, which is just natural for 2021 and 2022, we are already heading towards the future and we are all focused over the following years. I saw the investment plans for the big players in Romania until 2025. It's a matter of dozens of investment strategies and plans until the following years. And we'd all like to see this crisis to be as a V or as a U shape with as narrow base as possible. Everyone is expecting a 4% decrease for this year, but we are waiting for this V shape to be with a very narrow base. Yes, the legislative background is so important, as my 4 speakers said. I noticed before the crisis that there was an important interest about the renewable energies, and such an interest is determined by operational programs, by M&A projects. The first photovoltaic park was taken over this year. The facility was closed, but the other was launched, and it involves an important renewable projects and capacities, and we have new renewable projects for the future, but we need predictability for that. Just as the banks have said over the last years, we need predictability in terms of the project and in terms of how the whole project is structured, what is the support scheme, what are the sales mechanisms, and to what extent they are secure. Our main message goes like that. Funding sources are not limited to the banking ones. BCR is still an important player in the sector, and this is how we want to stay in the future. As far as the banking funding is concerned, yes, we'll contribute to the energy market. We also consider funding other things such as bonds. We are looking forward to invest into bonds, and we'd like to have such investment methods to be accessed by the players in the energy sector. I said earlier that the energy sector can make the difference between Romania and other countries in the competition. And I'd stop here because we are waiting for the companies to launch the most important messages in this respect. We are an enabler, we as a bank, but we all depend on the players and on the companies' plans. Thank you, ma'am, for this information. In the framework of this second panel related to investments, we've got a couple of questions. We'll be asking them after the first interventions are done. We are therefore continuing with Mr. Adrian Dumitriu, the CFO from Kim Complex, and we have the same topics. What are the strategy projects for investments so far? Good afternoon to you. We've got many pieces of information. I heard from you many important things. Just a brief introduction about Kim Complex. We are a siding partner in your everyday life. We are a direct contributor to the life security in Romania, and not only in our surrounding geographical area. We have running water because our company manufactures the chemicals necessary to chlorinate the water. We chlorinate the water for Bucharest, for Sofia, for Athens. We are manufacturing biocides and disinfectants. During winter, we treat the roads because we manufacture calcium carbonate used to remove snow from the roads. So we have many important contributions. If you drive the car, your back seat has got several components, for instance, polyol, which is manufactured by ourselves. So our company manufactures many chemicals. Our exports is the 70% of our annual production. We help reduce the trading balance deficit because we are an important exporter. Let's not forget that Romania had a deficit, a balance deficit for last year, more than 17 billion euros. And if we get into details, we see that almost one half of this deficit is caused by the biochemicals industry. When we were young, when we were children, we all learned about economy that Romania used to be an important exporter, but unfortunately we are a net importer nowadays, and I'm now speaking about chemicals, and the trade balance is very much imbalanced. It seemed interesting to me that you talked much about energy, about strategic investments. I recall we learned in school that Porter was the one to launch the strategic management, and it's a matter of competition benefits. When a company or an economic entity builds its strategy, they need to take into account what competition benefits they have. I was thinking about an economic agent in Romania. What's the competition benefits for that? It's quite difficult for us to find the competition benefits. We are the fifth energy consumer in the Romanian economy. And I learned once more that Romania is fourth as a producer in Europe, but the European Producers Exchange.
We see that the price of gas is about 15 euro per megawatt, so it's 3 times higher. To talk also about the reality, the electric power on the same site of the European Energy Exchange, we see that the price of energy in Romania or in Germany for 2021 is of about 37 euro. If you look on the Opcom side in 2021, we see we have 54 euro. So personally, I don't see the competitive advantages, and I'm speaking about from the perspective of a company that exports quite a lot. We're talking about an island energy market with high prices, where it's difficult to have a predictability. And I could say that our industry was hit as bad. Talking now about the coronavirus, since 2019, when the prices increased, we know the ordinance 214 plus the effects of the increase of the certificates of CO2. So we have a lot of things to do if we really want to go forward. I remember I've read recently a survey performed by World Economic Forum, those who organize the Davos Forum, which is a very important organization. And they performed an analysis regarding the risks in this period when the world economy is affected by the COVID crisis. The first risk is that of the extension of the economic crisis. Secondly, bankruptcies, then collapse in the emerging economies like Romania. And after the 10th position, we see another risk regarding the decrease of the flow of foreign investments. And so I come back to the topic of the current topic, the need of investments at the end of the intervention. We need investments. We have very important projects right now at the EU level. We discuss about sustainable development, the reduction of the impact of economy on the environment, circular economy, CO2 neutral economy. We have the Green Deal, which is transformed in a gas deal. So we have made some steps forward. We use the CO2 emissions in the production, and we use hydrogen today because in the production process, when we perform the hydrolysis of salt, we obtain chlorine, but also hydrogen, which is considered to be a fuel of the future, and we use it for the energy production. It is just for heating energy. We need investments. Personally, we have important investment projects. So we have a new factory of polyols completed up to 75% in Vâlcea. We have a PVC factory. Romania is 100% importer of PVC, but this factory is stopped because we don't have raw materials. Please finish the first intervention because we come closer to the final part of our panel, in which I would like to ask some questions which are addressed to you all. Just one thing which is very important. Romania has gas. I believe it's important for Romania to invest and to shift to the chemical processing of gas. We want to work with partners to work with for the increasing of the putting to use of the gas reserves in Romania. Thank you, Adrian Dumitriu. Like I said, in the second part, in the last 15 to 20 minutes, I would like to have an exchange of experiences and information by answering some questions. I'd like to ask this to Mrs. Elisabeta Ghidiu Transgas. The economic revival is a process we all like to have in a very short time. This would be very good. This can be done through large investment projects like the investments in natural resources of natural gas from the Black Sea. We know that according to the calculations made by experts, only in the Neptune offshore project, a number of jobs of 30,000 jobs will be created, and more than $70 billion contribution to the GDP up to 2030. But we need quick unblocking of the legislation that stops the real operation of these sites. So, like Elisabeta Ghidiu said, Transgas has an investment plan to connect the Black Sea with the network. So you said that 50% is already insured of the financing. The rest half comes from where? From EU funds, from the colleagues from the banking system. What do you think? Please switch your microphone on. Indeed, for the difference of the amount, the discussions, we have discussions with banks with Romanian capital, with other banks and international funds, European funds. All modalities will be analyzed. And for us, it's very important for the financing mix to be efficient as regards this program. Unfortunately, the microphone is off again. So this is what I try to say. It's very important to follow the efficacy, because you talked about economic revival. I'm talking about efficacy throughout the investment cycle. Everything must be followed from the first step. And together with the financial institutions and the Romanian banks, we have to see if the analyzed offers comply with this economic financing mix with lowest costs for the company. Because all the costs, so the regulated part is included in the tariff, so we have to follow the efficiency everywhere. Please check if all the Romanian speakers have the Korean language selected in the lower part in order to be heard also by the interpreters. Well, if there are no further questions, I should give you an optimistic message, because at Transgas we will continue through all our efforts. And in fact, it's our mission and it's a commitment we have towards shareholders, investors, partners, and so on, and all shareholders, that we will fulfill all the commitments with all seriousness, let's say. So I believe, like my colleague Ramona said, the financial soundness and the existence of a company depends on the way the human resources are managed within the company and, of course, outside too. The previous speakers said that we didn't have big problems regarding the COVID pandemic on the sites because we worked continuously. It was a very good work, all the specialists working in these projects, regardless of the bad weather and so on, have worked throughout this period, and we hope we won't have any problem regarding the COVID, and we should take care of each other. It's very important because only together we will be able to develop all this, and we will be able to achieve the investments. Thank you, Elisabeth. Now, regarding investments and the Black Sea, since it's a target at the FPPG, we think it is essential to have it as a factor of stimulating the economy on long term with the target of 20 to 30 years. The contribution of the natural resources at the Black Sea should be involved as soon as possible in the economic development. Mr. Kirika said that it wouldn't be bad for oil and gas and the nuclear should work together in an equation in which discussing major projects, we should have a joint voice. So I invite Mr. Kirika to come to FPPC to have a discussion with Transgas, Romgaz, Compet, and so on, the members of the Federation, to see how we can resonate. And talking about resonating, the stimulation of investments will also... I have a question to Stephen regarding the 11th round of tendering that would lead to an increase of the sector. Which is your point of view regarding this?
Thanks, Daniel. In terms of the 11th round, as a geologist, I always look to the past to be a predictor for the future. Now, the last round in 2010, the 10th round, it was estimated to have created around 1 billion euros of investment opportunities. And if you take into account the economic multiplier, which was estimated by PwC of 2.3 times that, that's over 2.3 billion euros of investment into the Romanian economy. So this is what happened before. We see the 11th round as very important, both for current operators in Romania, but also to bring in important foreign investment. So the 11th round is a great opportunity to help restart the economy in 2020. And to do that, the messages are the same: a stable and predictable fiscal and legislative regime for investors. We've got to address Geo27. We've got to address royalty calculations and reference pricing. We need a free market and a liberalisation. We need fiscal systems that favour local production over imported energy. And we need to modernise the Petroleum Law 238, that legislative framework, which will encourage land access, reduce the bureaucracy around permitting. Declassification of data is also required. So when I talk to international investors, they're always asking these questions. What's the fiscal regime like in Romania? What's the legislative regime like? I've heard it's really difficult to access land. And at Ropecca, we get lots of inquiries from people, from investors, international investors, interested in the 11th round. They want to come here. They just want to see this free and liberalised market, stable fiscal and legislative regime. And I know that sounds like a scratched record, but we need that. The players that are already here need that, and any new investment needs it. And the 11th round is a very important step towards encouraging investment in the future into upstream oil and gas. And through that, being able to provide the fuel that Kim Complex needs to get their business going, and for other players as well. So that's kind of what we at Ropecca and our members would say about the 11th round.
Thank you for your answer. I have a question to all of the colleagues in the panel because we have maximum 7 or 8 minutes for closure. Which is your point of view regarding the Green Deal package, the European package Green Deal would represent development operation, but also a threat in regarding the gas projects. Can the industry count on European funds to develop gas projects under the umbrella of the new Commission and its policies? I am asking the question to all of you. Who would like to start? Mr. Kirika, please open your microphone. In short, a part of my activity is related to the civil society, and I further represent the Romanian industry at the European Forum, and I'm close to the European Forum policies. I'm talking about the nuclear industry. The Green Deal approach is unfortunately an ideological approach, and it throws away traditional technologies and industries that have a significant contribution to the economy of the EU, but also the reduction of carbon emissions. So the question was for the gas industry, but also the nuclear field is not far from the issue. Well, the nuclear is in an unclear situation. I don't think about the European funds. I know how the nuclear investments are promoted because through the Euratom regulations are approved by the Commission, and they check the financing conditions, and if they compare the competitiveness with the technology that accesses EU funds in preferential conditions, it's difficult. We hope that this situation will be solved finally. I cannot imagine that Europe can give up nuclear energy and gas overnight. It's impossible. And let's not forget that a country that I admire, the strongest country, closes nuclear plants and opens coal plants. It is a strange solidarity sign. Thank you for the intervention. Elisabetta, please open the microphone. I would like to say a few words regarding the Green Deal and talking about the gas. I think we all believe that transforming the climate changes into a development challenge or opportunity is a challenge. Now, talking about the macro level at the EU level, there are presentations with the support of with the regional investment plans, the so-called GRIPs, and the goals regarding the Green Deal related to the investments in new technologies in order to contribute to the economic growth that we desire and follow. It's very important, and we know that regardless the field, Romania needs major investments in the next period, which must be focused efficiently and on real and concrete needs. And this is how they can be materialized in each field. And all the previous speakers in their companies, they make huge efforts to achieve the investment plans, because all the investments remain for the future generations. And this is something good, because this is how we consolidate the national economy and the regional one.
To come back to the infrastructure, I underline what Mrs. Verscher said at the beginning. Investments will be vital in the future, and it's important to have a regional cooperation as well. I'd insist on that because Romania's interconnections to our neighboring countries. Sorry, we cannot hear from you, Mrs. Ghidiu. Your mic is off. Sorry for that. I'm located in a way where I don't quite know the things. I'm in the IT department. I wanted to emphasize the role of the regional cooperation for the future construction of such investment program by ENSOC and by the DNDP are in line with for the following years. They will be in line. And as far as the initiative of the 3 Cs is concerned, the gas infrastructure is very much important. And this is added value factor. This is why we emphasize such investment projects so much. Our plan is around 4 billion euros, and the projects for which investment decisions were made and those which are in an advanced stage of the investment decision is at 1.25 billion euros. Thank you, Elisabetta, for your intervention. One quick question. Ramona Curco from BCR, you said about 500 million funding for energetic projects mainly, and other sectors such as agriculture as well. My question goes like that. What major projects from energy knock to your door right now? Very quickly, I can tell you that we have been involved with the Transgaz, the Black Sea, so all the great projects occurring over the last years, and now we've been involved in the M&A transactions. I mentioned approved transactions. We'll be implementing them as well, and most of those transactions are related to funding of M&A projects. Those are not investments such as Brua or M&A Invest. So we are waiting for those investment plans announced by all the players in the industry, Hidroelectrica, Transgaz, and Romgaz, to be funded someday. Thank you so much, Mrs. Curco. You are very prompt now, because we are waiting. All the colleagues from the Oil and Gas Employers Federation are waiting forward to see our colleagues from the Romanian Parliament to be very wise and to be able to unblock the regulation framework so that we can talk perhaps during the second edition of the Energynomics Forum about running investment projects with gas resources from the Black Sea to develop Romania's economy. That was our third plenary panel about strategy for technology, digitalization and automation. Thank you so much. Strategy for investment, financing new projects. I am now passing the floor to the organizers for smoothly organizing this summit. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for getting so much involved, for so actively involved, and for your contribution during this summit. As usual, Energynomics will draft a printed report of this event and submit it to the authorities. I'd like to emphasize that I was following you, and it was quite a pleasure. It was very interesting to hearing from you. I'm very satisfied with how things go so far. So thank you, Daniel, for moderating the second plenary panel. We are concluding the second panel of the day, and we kindly invite you to stay with us to be a part of the following interventions. At 1:15, we'll have a third panel about nuclear energy. This is quite something new for us. I'm glad we have a new topic. Mr. Ron Obert, the president of the Canadian Nuclear Industries Organization, will be with us. At 2 p.m., we'll have Mr. Nicolae Havrilets as a keynote speaker. And then at 4 p.m., we'll have a regional cooperation session with Radu Dudou as moderator. And we'll be concluding the day with closing remarks at the highest level conversation at 5:30 during the afternoon. We are now taking a 30 minutes break, and we are waiting forward to seeing you live within 30 minutes. Now, please use the networking break for exchanging visit cards and for establishing contacts with your peers. Thank you so much.